back, everyone. I hope you had fun time with your family and you had your chance to visit one or two places as well, hopefully. So let me share my screen and then we'll get started. Last week, if you guys recall, we had built this beautiful book uh, book library kind of bookstore uh, where we had a bunch of books and we were displaying their authors. And we learned about what is map function or how can you use key and display items in an array. Now, if you look at our code, we have four books with ID 10, 20, 30, 40. And those are the four books that uh, we, we are displaying on the screen. Assume now that we need to add one more book. Well, I have a button. And before we click on the button, let's look at the code for that button. This is the button that I have, add book. And on click of the button, on the clicking of the button, I'm calling this function or method, which adds another book to my books array. So my books are now 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. So let me console log the entire books array. And this I'm doing this for you guys, so you guys will be debugging code in when you work somewhere or you build your own project. And console logging is one good way of debugging besides besides the besides the actual errors themselves. So let's refresh our uh, thing and see, we have four books, 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 30, 40, four books here. I'm clicking on add the book. I called add the book function. So, and now my books array have 5 books. But if you look at my display or my screen, you still see 4 books. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, what is happening here? If we go back and look at this, we updated our books array, but we still don't see it. We still don't see it on the screen. Well, this is the precisely topic of discussion today. One of the most critical topics of today's discussion. Uh, and I had to show you guys what really happens if we don't work with React in a manner that React understands. So this is not the correct way to handle a variable which can update over the time. Tomorrow you might remove a book or add a book. That means this variable books is updating in your component. React provides something called state, known as state. It's known as state to handle this kind of variables. Right now, this is just a plain JavaScript variable. And when you uh, convert it to a state variable, that's when uh, it starts to update itself. So we'll come back to this example in a bit. And let's go to a new code that I have built for today's class. Or maybe actually I'll push this code with a broken, I'll put a no display of updated books. What I'm hoping is once you guys learn today's concepts, you should be able to pull this code again in your machine and fix this error. This is not part of your exercise or homework per se, but if you guys really want to practice today's concept and really master it, this is something extra you can do. I'll put this code in our repository. So uh, everybody clear with the issue we have? All right. So moving on, React provides precisely thing called state to manage the variables which are which can change over the course of your application's running. We usually refer to as a term called rendering. This is a term. It's going to be very critical for you to understand. What you are displaying here is rendering or showing on the screen. So let's go to the code that's there for today. We have a greetings application where we are saying welcome and a person's name, in this case Jane, and have a nice day, Jane. And this is, I'm just printing, let me remove that so you guys don't get confused. Uh, so we have this, and we have an ability to change this name Jane to Jack if we like. So our aim is to, when we type Jack here, we should display instead of Jane, Jack. So to do that, the first step that we need to do is we need to convert our username, which is Jane, to a state variable. So I'm jumping a step maybe here. Let's look at the code that's there here. We have a new application, um, again created with Vite, something you guys must be familiar. But what I have done is now I have created two additional components. We'll look at the first component here, which is called greetings. So this is the component that is getting displayed. Now, if you guys recall from our discussion and when we were reviewing the Airbnb website, component is nothing but a reusable piece of code which can display something over and over. So if I take this greetings component, I have now an ability to show as many greeting components as possible over and over again. So see, I have welcome Jane, welcome Jane, welcome Jane. Now, if you check this, all the components have same name Jane. So React provides an opportunity to us to pass these things such as this username as a parameter or as a property as we know to React to the component. So let's do first, what is a property? So I want to say user, so let's just put name is, and let's just say Jack. And here skip Jane. And here, let's do Jill. So Jack, Jane, and Jill. Uh, and now I get an opportunity to, instead of showing the Jane, I show whatever the parent. So now at this point, app component becomes a parent component because it is something that is housing the greetings component. So greetings becomes a child component. And stop me if you guys have any confusion. So, and somebody was asking me about props. So today is the good day to look at what it means by props. So here, instead of saying it Jane, I will say props.name, and let's see what happens. Voila, we have now Jake, Jane, and Jill. So whatever I'm passing from the parent component to uh, the child component, here the greeting becomes a child component, uh, and it is child component receives something called props or properties. It's a shorthand for properties, and properties we'll see can be more than one. Here we have just one property, name. It can have more than one property, and child can display or use that property as it likes. So what do I mean by child can have more than one property, right? So let's say child had another greeting property, and that was, uh, copy this, that we called as have a nice day. And here we say to Jane, have a nice week. And to Jill, we say, have a nice year or month, December, I forget month. So now we have passed more than one property to our child component greetings, and child can then go back and use this property instead of showing the same message, welcome, have a nice day. Instead of showing the same message, it can show the message that is customized to that user. Props that greetings. Did I copy well? Yes. So now let's go back and see. So Jack is getting a message, have a nice day. Jane is getting have a nice week. And Jill is getting have a nice month. This is the power of properties. Here we have passed two properties, name and greetings, to our child component. Uh, are we clear on properties and especially the concept of parent and child component? Because this is going to be absolutely critical for you guys to understand a React code base. So tomorrow you go to a company and start working, and their user interface or their mobile application is built in React. You will see something like this over and over again. And it should be clear to you guys the relation between components, that here app component is a parent function and greetings and similarly user input function are child components. Are we clear on that? I'm happy to explain this again because this is going to be very critical and fundamental concept even before we go to state.
I see that the parent lives in app.jsx. Where does the child live again?
The child, it's its own file greetings.
Okay, got it.
Uh, and that's a very good question. Uh, let's have another component called subgreeting. and call this component as concept greeting. Let's say what will subgreet say? Let's say I am pleased to have you in my class. Subgreeting. Now we created another component, and subgreeting need not to go inside here. So we could say subgreeting here, and so let's do first. I want you guys to be clear on the parent and child, what it means to be parent and what it means to be component subgreetings. So we are saying, I'm pleased to have you in my class once for all these three people. Very similarly, I could have had subgreeting as a child component instead of putting in app.jsx because uh, in the current code flow, app is parent component, but it may not be parent component always. Let's put the subgreeting here. So we can always do something like this to build a complex component structure. And if you see what just happened, each person is getting this message. Now, I'm pleased to have you in my class. Let me just make this smaller. I'm pleased to have you in my class. And why this is happening? Because we made subgreetings component as child component to the greetings component. Now, for subgreeting and greeting, greeting is parent. So who is a parent and who is a child does not get defined by which file they are in or where they are coded. It strictly gets defined by the rendering or in the order in which they appear in React component tree. So let's look at this more closely. I'll make this on the right side. So if I inspect this element, if you see the HTML that gets built, here is our root. So this is our app component. And then this is our component, which is a greetings component. And then inside greetings, we have this subgreeting component. Again, this is another greeting. And let me make it clear. Greeting component. So let me make this div and class name greeting. To make it explicit for you guys. Yeah. So let's look at this. We have one greeting here, another greeting here, another greeting here. These three components have a subcomponent called I'm pleased to have you in my class or subgreeting. So now we created three layers of relationships. So on top, highest most layer, say on the highest most layer, we have app component and app's child is greetings. And greetings child is subgreeting. Does this make sense? So app has child, which is greetings, and it has another child called subgreetings. So technically subgreetings is child of both app and greetings. So it's
So
like father and grandfather thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry for interrupting. So app
Nice.
is obviously it's in its own file. Greetings is in its own file, and then subgreeting is just within the component of greetings. Is that right?
No, no. So app is in its own file.
Okay.
Greetings is in its own file.
Hmm.
And subgreetings is in its own file. Now, I could have very easily coded. This is not a good practice, but I could have easily coded subgreeting, let's say V2, and in my class V2, and I could have used subgreeting here as well. A lot of people I have seen doing it, maybe they were new to React or something.
Mm.
Uh, but you see, this is a separate component, and this is also a separate component. If you see line 16 and 17, they are two different React components. It doesn't matter where the components are coded, in their own file or in the same file or whichever way. What and absolutely what matters is how they are rendered or how they are displayed. Whenever I say rendered, you guys have to, if you don't follow it, then you have to assume I'm talking about displaying on the web page or browser. So how we are displaying them on web page or browser is the only source of truth to identify the greetings and the parent and the child relation between the components. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Right. So this is parent and child component and their relation and what the prop means. So there is y- um, another way how we can write this. A lot of people like to write, even I like to write nowadays this way is, let's say, I instead of using props.name, props.greeting, we use the destructuring. This something cool about JavaScript. You can always define these properties and it would still uh, behave the same. So let's remove this. I keep it equally here so you guys, when you guys get the code, you have the reference. But I like to keep code like this as well. It's more cleaner, more easier to understand what is happening. And you'll see a lot of people code their properties like this rather than calling it as a single thing prop. They'll just actually destructure it to their uh, names to be used. So now tying back to our earlier discussion of state. Now assume that, so we in our application we have an ability, and I'll not show many more greetings. I'll just show one, but I'm not removing the code. So when you guys pull the code, you still have the reference. So I have a ability to change my name from Jack to Jill. And to do that, as we discussed a little while ago, instead of using a regular variable, so this Jack could be a regular variable, constant some name equal to Jack. And instead of calling it Jack, we can still say uh, Jack, and or we can say Jill, anything we can say in our Corel display here, that variable name. Even though I have the ability to change this Jill to Jack, I am unable to display the correct message. Hey, welcome, Jack. So to overcome, right, we instead of using this, we use something called state variables. And to use state variables, so we use a special method that React provides to us, or a special function, um, which is called um, useState, to define a variable so that React knows that it is a special variable whose name is username, and it is supposed to be modified during the running of our application. And this is the Jane here is called initial value. This could be empty value or anything. So let's assume that we had an empty value. Let me break actually. Let's see what error this is. Some name is not defined. So what mistake we did? We actually removed the some name variable, but we still did not use. So because we have started with the empty value of username, we are saying welcome comma and then it's just blank. Now, what is our objective is when I say Jane, it should come here, right? So how is this happening? This is happening through something called variable upgradation, variable value modification. In the most basic terms, let's look at this. So let's assume that we had uh, const. We had another variable called some value, and set value, and we'll come to what set value is. Use state, and let's say we had a value of 1, and let's display this value here. Current value is 1, and let's have a button to change this values. And what value? So update the value is not defined. So let's define the method const update value. And we have update the value. So our objective is whenever we click on this, the value should update and one should be added to the current value. So when you define the state variable using useState, you get to have a method. And right now we have conveniently named this method as set value. And set value will take the new value or new thing for your value variable. So we are saying, let's multiply our value by 2 instead of Just adding one. So let's see what happens. And let's click. So now every time where I'm clicking here, my current value is getting multiplied by 2. And this multiplied by 2 value is getting assigned back. So whatever parameter I provide. So to simplify it, right? Const new value, 0 value into 2. And whatever I pass as a parameter to the set value function gets assigned to my value variable. So every time I click, it'll be getting multiplied by 2. So does this make sense? How value and set value got incremented or multiplied by 2? Then I'll come to set username and, and username.
The set value part makes sense to me. Do you mind going over the value part one more time?
Value is a variable and set value is a function. So I use the variable to display something on the UI, and I use the function to change the value of the display and update my UI. So when I come here, the one that I'm seeing is where let's say value of value. Very funny word to use, value of value. So let's put it this way. When I'm coming here and I'm seeing Jane, Jane is the value of username. And set username is the function that will update the value of username. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's totally clear. Thank you.
So very similar to our greetings component, I have created an input component and I have used what we discussed a little while ago, which is destructuring of properties. And I am using the destructuring of the property to pass this time. So in my app.js, when we use greetings, we pass simple value, just the value itself. But instead of passing the value, this time I'm passing the function. So in the property, you can pass value as well as a function. So in the username, user input, uh, user input is nothing but this box that you see. In the user input function, I am passing the exact function that is supposed to change the value of username. And because I am passing that function, and that function is running every time I'm changing something in this input box. So onChange is a method that is available on input, and it runs every time I type something here. So let's say I say S for something. Anything, every time I'm typing something, this function is running onChange, and onChange is then running the function set username that parent component app passed to our user input. Does it make sense? Every time I'm typing something, my parent component, which is my whole this trick screen, had passed set username function to input component, which is the child of it. So it is updating the value of the username. Does this make sense? So now we are able to pass a string or a function to child components. I'll stop here because this might get confusing. So I'll stop here and maybe let you guys ask any questions you might have. So that's all there is actually for today.